Well, hey, everyone. Welcome again to Entrepreneur Encounters. I'm excited to have you here. I'm Brent Halfwass. I'm an entrepreneur coach and business catalyst. My goal is to get you fired up this morning, help you grow your profitability and accelerate your business. Welcome to Entrepreneur Encounters. This is the show where we want to focus on folks who are in business. They're maybe a little bit farther along than we are, so that you can learn from them. You can learn from their story. And ideally, you're able to accelerate their business from something you have. That's why I'm really excited today to have Paul M. Neuberger on the call with us today. He's the founder of the Cold Call Coach and also C-Suite for Christ. I think you're going to find his story amazing and some of the points he has to share wonderful. So without further ado, Paul, thanks for joining the show.
Hey, nice to be here, Brent. I appreciate you having me.
Awesome. Hey, tell us a little bit about yourself and your businesses.
Well, how much time you got for that question? Because I think that could pretty much take up the entire conversation. But I'm one of these guys. I believe if you're going to summarize me into a motto, it's this: making the impossible possible. I don't get out of bed to do the easy. I don't get out of bed to follow somebody else's trail. I get out of bed to do the hard. I get out of bed to blaze my own trail. So the two businesses that you referenced, I do more than just that, but those are where I spend the bulk of my time. So cold calling. I think we've all been told that cold calling is impossible. Cold calling is dead. I don't know. So somebody once said cold calling died in 1997. I guess I never saw that death certificate. I don't know how they ascertain that information, but if everybody in the world thinks that cold calling is dead, gosh, if we can not only utilize that tool, but be very, very good in that skill, that gives us a distinct competitive advantage. So for the last 8 years, I've been training individuals and organizations all across the world how to master that skill. And then C-Suite for Christ, which I know you're intimately familiar with. I believe that that's the same thing. You know, the world tells us you can't talk about Christ on a secular business platform like LinkedIn. You can't talk about Christ openly because you might offend people. What is that old adage? Never talk about politics or religion at the dinner table, I suppose. Well, I take conventional wisdom and turn that on its head also. And because I've been telling the world not so much who I am, but whose I am, we started quite a following. C-Suite for Christ was born, and now we got thousands of executives all over the world associated with us. So I suppose that's what gets me out of bed, and I'm very fortunate to be doing what I do every day.
Love it. Why did you want to become an entrepreneur? You didn't start out initially in that role. You had a different track. So why did you decide to launch in and become a full-time entrepreneur?
I think it's because I couldn't work for anybody else. I don't know if you can relate to that. It's not that I'm a troubled employee. It's not that I don't like authority, but I think for some of the rationale that I would have for that, one, just a lot of my bosses couldn't keep up with me. I mean, again, it's always doing, always going, and not just always doing and going, but just pushing back against conventional wisdom, challenging the status quo. You know, we've always done it this way. What if we do it this way? Yeah, Paul, I'm not really comfortable with that. Well, it's hard to stifle a caged bird for so long. I just want to let those wings of mine fly. And if they work, great. If they don't, fine. At least I know. But to keep hearing, no, we can't do all that stuff. No, we can't push the envelope that much. No, we can't go against company precedent. No, that's not what our culture is all about. Fine. That's what they pay them for. I don't begrudge those people. But I just felt like I was being boxed in. And also, I would suppose, too, kind of like what I had said previously, I'm just a guy full of ideas, and there are a lot of sheep in this world. Doesn't mean that they're bad people, but individuals that are afraid to take risks, individuals that are afraid to go outside of their comfort zone, individuals that say, yeah, this could work, but I'm going to focus on all the reasons why it won't work. How are you ever going to grow? How are you ever going to touch the lives that you aspire to if you're not able to step outside of your comfort zone once in a while? So for that reason, it just hurt my quality of life. It made me, to some degree, regret being associated with some of the organizations that I was a part of. And I thought, hey, I'm going to take these ideas. I'm going to take this innovation. I'm going to take this desire to take risks and do it on my own. And thankfully, it worked out fairly well.
Yeah, I want to touch on something you said there. I think one of the key differentiators for an entrepreneur, where everyone else sees a problem, entrepreneur sees an opportunity. Where everyone else tells you, no, you can't go that way because no one's ever done it. And you're like, yeah, but why? And why not? Like, let's get her done. So I love that. Walk me through your journey to get started into business. There were some transitions, both. Actually, you told me on a call one time a little bit of how you got fired up about the cold call coach and how you kind of figured out that that was one of your niches. And then I want to hear too about C-Suite for Christ, because I know that's a particular passion of yours. So walk us on that journey. How'd you get started?
Yeah, we'll start with cold call coach. So I've always been an extroverted human being ever since I was 3 years old, and my parents would take me to the Wisconsin State Fair. Every time I'd see somebody, I'd want to start a conversation with them. I don't know. I've just always been extroverted, love to have conversations with people. And when I was a college student, I graduated from Ripon College in 2005. My sophomore year, I joined the Ripon College Student Phone-a-thon. I just thought that'd be a great way to make money, great way to meet people, great way to talk, build relationships. Plus, like I said, the challenge of that. Most people hear cold calling and they want to vomit in their mouth a little bit. Most people hear, hey, you're going to randomly reach out to this donor and you're going to ask them for $10,000 on their credit card. People would start to have night terrors and cold sweats. I mean, that just amped me up. So I was very, very good at it. I really enjoyed it. And I became a professional fundraiser over the course of 8 or 9 years, working for colleges, universities. And then my father-in-law tragically passed away very suddenly from a heart attack in November of 2012. And he kind of left my mother-in-law in a rough financial position. And as always, when anything goes bad in my life, Brent, I blame myself. I mean, it's a curse, because you're always carrying this weight of stuff I couldn't control, stuff I couldn't conceivably fix. I dwell on that, but it's also a blessing because I want to change the world and be one of those change agents to kind of make the world a better place. So I said, well, geez, if I couldn't help my in-laws at this period of their life when they needed it, I'm going to make sure that nobody else has to go through that situation again. So I joined Thrivent Financial. Part of the reason I joined Thrivent, A, I was a client, but B, I really appreciated their Christian approach to business. It was all about their corporate culture. So for me, I joined Thrivent. Well, now here was the challenge though. Previously, as a professional fundraiser, I was cold calling against the backdrop of a guaranteed salary. Now I'm cold calling 100% commission. Stakes go up, pressure goes up. Hey, I better rise to the occasion. Thrivent says, don't worry, Neuberger, we got you covered. Here's a script. I took one look at that and I said, this isn't a script. This is toilet paper. I'm going to be broke if I have to use this. So I spent a couple of months trying to modify the approach. How do I hunt my ideal clients? What's the hook? How am I going to pique curiosity? How am I going to generate interest? It took a while. I was not an overnight smash sensation. I can assure you that much. But after time, through this refinement process, I got to the point where I'd make 15 calls. I'd schedule 15 appointments. I became this bona fide circus freak. People looked at me as if I had lobsters crawling out of my ears. And then I started to hear this refrain over and over. Paul, we'll pay you to train my team. Paul, we'll pay you to write a script. Paul, I'll pay you just to sit in your office and listen to you make cold calls. I always thought that one was a little weird. But again, as an entrepreneur, like you said, you see opportunity where some people miss it. So I created the Cold Call Coach in April of 2015. Pretty soon, demand was quite intense. I had a decision to make. And the last thing I'll say about this is I just made the determination. There's a financial advisor on every street corner in every city of every state. But how many people are stupid enough to teach cold calling for their full-time career? So I thought, hey, I'd be in a lane all by myself. I can suck all the oxygen out of the room if I go that route. I did. And the rest is history. I now have clients in 50 states, 132 countries. I wrote a best-selling book, and I'm probably having more fun than I'm legally allowed to have.
Oh, that's fantastic. Tell us a little bit about some of the surrounding choices. You're married to an amazing woman. You've got some kids. Like what are the choices that you had to do to change? You actually had two big transitions. One to go from salary to 100% commission. Then you go to, it's a new version of 100% commission because as an entrepreneur, you eat what you kill. So how did that work? What type of choices did you have to make?
Well, it wasn't necessarily the easiest decision in the world, but if it was easy, everybody would do it. And for my opinion, that's what separates the men from the boys, the women from the girls. It's not to say that is not a tacit endorsement for somebody who has a stupid idea to pursue that at all costs. I mean, what I liked about the decision that I made, and again, I'm so far from perfect, it's not even funny. I already screwed up 5 or 6 times this morning before hopping on this call. So I certainly don't have all the answers. But what I liked about the process that I did, and this has followed me throughout my entire entrepreneurial life, is I came up with the supply to meet the demand, not the other way around. And you'll see that from time to time. Entrepreneurs will say, I got this great idea. I'm going to come up with this greeting card company. We're going to sell 50 greeting cards for $100, and we're going to be different because of ABCD. And then my question is always, oh, interesting. How much interest have you had in that? Well, none yet. Oh, well, how much money is going to be in there for you? Well, I don't know yet. Well, red light, stop. Do not proceed. For me, at least, I mean, I was the top life insurance salesman in my regional financial office for Thrivent. I had a very powerful why. I was selling life insurance on my family, friends, and associates because I didn't want anybody to be in the situation my mother-in-law found herself in. I mean, I was passionate. I loved it. Their Christ-centric culture was something that I could really get behind. But when I saw this line of 30 organizations deep, when I said, wow, I'd be one of the few people to teach cold calling, when I saw the money that was coming in, it was a little bit of an easier decision. That doesn't mean it was an easy decision, because some people change their mind. Sometimes, you make a ton of money 1 month, you go 3 months without any other money. Now I'm thinking, man, I gotta ration stuff here. How am I going to handle this? But the decision really was that there's demand here, there's money here. I have a proven track record of success. Can we keep this up? And thankfully, the last thing I'll say is, you referenced, I had a very supportive spouse. Tanya, my wife, is a stay-at-home mom. So, I mean, that just amplifies the pressure even more. If we go off the rails, if the money doesn't come in, I don't have another person in this household that's generating revenue. My children are not star kid actors quite yet. So I've had a supportive spouse. She's behind me 100%. She prays for me. She is there to listen to me. And without that, there's no way I could do what I do every day.
Let's also talk about C-Suite for Christ. What was the origin of that, and why it's been such a passion? Because that's obviously taking up a significant portion of your time and energy too, because that's yet another organization to be able to build out and get a platform for.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's very important, based on these questions that you're asking, that everybody who's in business, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're just a professional working at an organization, everybody needs to have a why. Why do you do what you do? And regrettably, Brent, a lot of people just have no clue. They've just never thought about that. I'm here because I have to be. Really? I don't have a why. Yeah, right. You've just been going to your same organization for 6 years because you've never really thought about it. Well, I want to take care of my family. Well, you can do that anywhere. I mean, you really got to have a firm understanding and appreciation for why you do what you do. I mean, that really dictates the decisions that you're going to make moving forward. My C-Suite for Christ why, again, this was not something I set out to do. I didn't graduate from college and say, you know what, I'm going to start this cold call business. No, I'm going to be a professional fundraiser for the rest of my life. That was it. I've always had a really good relationship with God. I'm somewhat embarrassed to admit this, but I guess it's good to put this out there, that it wasn't until about 4 years ago that I really started spending time in the Word. For the first 35 years of my Christian faith, I really didn't read Scripture much. I believe what I believe, and that's it. Well, that was a bit of a mistake on my part. I mean, just pouring into Scripture, spending time in the Word, armoring up, hearing God's words directly, unfiltered, the pure, clean water. It just did so much for my soul and my spiritual development. And anybody who's a Christian needs to spend time in the Word. It's just a night and day difference when you're not in it versus when you do read certain scriptures. And the one story that jumped out at me, just almost the first time I read it, was the parable of the talents. And my key takeaway from the parable of the talents is God has generously blessed all of us with a unique set of talents, abilities, and skills. What are we doing with them? A, are we acknowledging that they came from God? B, are we using them to the fullest extent possible? This is a topic for another show, Brent, but to some degree in this entitlement, lazy society, that's the biggest sin of all. This one person could be curing cancer. He just can't get off the damn couch. This person could be touching lives and making the world a better place. But for whatever reason, based on his upbringing or whatever else, he doesn't have the work ethic needed to do that. And for God to give us these talents and we don't use them, what a tragedy that is. But lastly, we have to give glory to him in the utilization of those talents and abilities. Now, I'm not a man of many talents, but the one that I have in particular, if I do say so with all due humility, is my communication. I've been a good speaker. I love being on stage. I'm able to get people to follow a cause, get excited, articulate a point fairly well. So I thought, gee, I've got this ability to communicate. I didn't work at that. God gave it to me. And I've got this large social media following. God put me in a position to make that happen. Am I going to use this ability to communicate? And am I going to use this large social media following to tell the world who I am? Or am I going to use those items, those abilities, those opportunities to tell the world whose I am? And I think for far too long in my professional career, I was boasting from the rooftops of who I am. Well, as Paul says in the letter to the Corinthians, the only thing we should be boasting about is the cross of Jesus, the cross of Christ, because without that, nothing that we do matters. So I started to flip the switch a little bit, and I started to step out of my comfort zone. I started talking about my faith. I started sharing scripture. I started talking about what I believe. Now, that is not an easy thing to do. In retrospect, people look at C-Suite for Christ today and say, of course, why wouldn't you do it? But when you're doing that in a secular business platform where a lot of people don't agree with something that personal, you're putting yourself out there. For every attack or two that I got, I would have people say, wow, Paul, I believe what you believe. We should talk. Wow, Paul, that was inspirational. We should talk. I called these things fellowship meetings, and I became borderline addicted to them. And after a couple of months of just meeting my brothers and sisters in Christ all over the world, hey, Brent, you should meet Hector. Hector, you should meet Kimberly. Kimberly, you should meet Larry. I said, let's get together one day. I called it C-Suite for Christ because we were all top executives. Our first gathering was in February. Our first gathering was in December of 2018. And I thought this was just going to be a small little group of people that get together over a stack of flapjacks at Denny's and talk about our faith journey. Fast forward 3 years later, we are now over 2,350 Christian individuals associated with us. We are 41,000 strong on LinkedIn. We get over 3.2 million views every single month on our C-Suite for Christ content. We're planting chapters all across the country. I have a TV show, a radio show, and a podcast. It's been amazing to see God's hand at work. All the glory goes to him. I just kept my eyes open and went with where I thought he was leading me to go.
Well, that's amazing. How do you continue to identify the problems that you want to solve? Just by way of background, I believe that people are buying because they're looking to have a problem solved. So you've got a couple of businesses there. I want to actually focus specifically on the C-Suite for Christ, because I think you're highlighting an idea. You said it's not who I am, but am I proclaiming whose I am? How does that resonate though with the folks you're doing outreach to, and how do you identify the problem that they're looking to have addressed by an organization like C-Suite for Christ?
Well, I just think people in this day and age are a little fed up that they can't be themselves. They can't be their true, authentic selves. And I believe firmly that cancel culture is a real thing. I mean, people start talking about their faith on social media. All of a sudden you get this mob of people. Well, that's offensive to me. I don't like that. I mean, again, it's not even just in social media. You just see this happening all over the place in society today. You have nativity scenes that are removed from the public square because it offended one or two people. You always have people in any given year that are filing lawsuits because on the back of a dollar bill it says, "In God we trust." You've got parents that are raising holy hell because when they do the Pledge of Allegiance in school, one nation under God, I'm offended because we don't believe in God. Now again, I mean, people just seem to be more offended than ever before. There's this hair trigger now more than ever before. And it just struck me, based on my experience and what you read and what you see and what other people tell you, that more often than not, it just seemed like Christianity bore the brunt of that. What makes us so special? I guarantee you, if there was somebody that was nominated to the United States Supreme Court or to a federal bench that was a Muslim, and you have a U.S. senator saying, based on you being a Muslim, I think that disqualifies you from holding the bench. Just imagine the outcry, rightfully so, that would come from that. Yet we've had Christians that have been in a similar position, and certain senators have said, you know what, your Christian faith kind of concerns me. Yet that's okay. Yet that's not a problem. So I wanted to liberate myself first and foremost. Look, I'm sick of contraring what society says. I'm sick of not being my true, authentic self, especially when one political spectrum talks about diversity, inclusion, differentiation of thought. Let's start doing that. Was everybody happy? No. But what I found is it was just this spark that lit a fire. It just got a number of people first to say, hey, I'm going to encourage this guy because I believe that. The more I did it, the more people we attracted, the bigger the support group that we were able to start to create. People started to feel a little bit more comfortable to come out of the shadows. Not just that. Now, I'm not just going to like C-Suite for Christ posts. I'm going to start going to gatherings. I'm not just going to go to these gatherings. I'm going to start posting on social media. And we've started to create this tidal wave of what I call covering the world in Christ. That's our motto. We are unabashedly Christian, unapologetically Christian. I think most people that share our belief in that regard would say this world needs more Christ. Part of the reason we are in this place as a society is because Christ has been systemically removed from a lot of our major institutions, especially compared to 40, 50, 60 years ago. So as I've gotten more encouragement from people, keep going. I need this. It's teaching me to be my true, authentic self. We've doubled down and we're liberating people to join us and to let that guard down on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing aspect, is choosing to return the microphone, if you will, to each individual to say, in a way that's appropriate, share who you are, whose you are, where you are, and what's important to you. And don't let others redefine that for you. And I think, again, I would say that's another element that I'd encourage all the listeners and viewers to take home. Figure out who you were created to be, and embody that part out. So, what have you had to adapt along the way? You've got a lot of, businesses grow, they change, they morph. You've got, you've started out with a script that was handed to you at Thrivent. You didn't like that. You've turned on. You've got a pattern of continuous improvement, I would say. How have you adapted your business model along the way of your journey?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I would say, the first thing that comes to my mind is depth as opposed to width. And that's one of the things that I've really grown to appreciate in the last couple of years. I mean, I do have a lot going on. That's certainly true. But over the last 2 years in particular, I've just made this determination that I got to really do an evaluation of what's working and what's not. Now, one of the things, and I say this with all due humility, I say this not to be braggadocious. It's just that a lot of the stuff that I was doing was working. I mean, you look at Cold Call Coach. I mean, that's been my flagship business now for going on 9 years. That continues to do really well. The Cold Call Coach has led to a career as an international keynote speaker because I love speaking. I'm passionate up there. And a number of people would say, hey, Paul, I'm never going to hire you to cold call. I think cold calling is yucky. Even if you could train me how to do it, I'm not going to do it. But man, you are a dynamic speaker. What keynote speeches do you offer? Well, at the time it was none. So let's come up with some. That has taken off. Because I'm so passionate about entrepreneurship and young people, I partnered with a couple of other entrepreneurs and we founded the Young Guns movement. We just talked about C-Suite for Christ. I'm an author. I have a TV show, radio show, podcast. Pretty soon, I'm like this rubber band that is about ready to snap because it's stretched so thin. And I had to start basically looking myself in the mirror and saying, is this all worth it? And for me, the answer was no. Nothing is worth working 19-hour days. Nothing is worth a divorce. Nothing is worth being an absent father. Nothing is worth your health. That's my opinion. If somebody wants to disagree, fine. God gave us free will. Go nuts. But for me, as I get ready to hit 40 at the end of 2022, I mean, it just becomes more and more obvious. Life is going fast. My kids are growing up quickly. I've got only so many years of reasonably good health before my body starts to shut down like it's going to shut down for everybody. I don't want to be there on my deathbed and look at a big bank account or look at a business card or look at the entrepreneur of the year trophy that I won. I want to see my kids that know God and love me. I want to have decades of a loving, worthwhile, mutually beneficial relationship with my spouse. That was what was most important. So I divested myself of ownership in Young Guns. I've limited the amount of speeches that I do. I've limited the amount of sales trainings that I offer just so I can go very, very deep and make these things replicable, scalable, transferable. And one of the things that happened over time is I now have more clients. I'm making more money, but I'm spending less time at it because it's more a rinse, lather, repeat. It's customizable It meets the unique needs, goals, and challenges of the individuals or organizations that I'm working with, but I don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. I'm happier. I'm averaging probably close to 8 hours of sleep a night, which is unheard of over the course of the past year or so, because I just decided to get smarter based upon what I wanted out of life. And the last thing I'll say is, some people just feel like they've lost control. I have to work 19 hours a day. No, you don't. My calendar controls me. No, it doesn't. You're in control. And when you stop playing the victim card and you start saying, I own my calendar, I own my future, I own my decisions, I own what I'm going to make this life to be, it's the most liberating thing out there.
Oh, I love there are a couple pieces there, but one is take ownership back, decide to set the boundaries where you want, you own it, you control it. You can choose in the ways you want to honor it. And I enjoyed what you said too about that rinse, lather, repeat a lot. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly in the services industries, professional services, it can be a model that you'd have and still customize to the customer, but it doesn't have to be built from scratch all the time. And I got to imagine that it's great to hear that you've both been able to invest back in your family, your community, and honestly, your sleep and your own health. So those are some great takeaways for anyone to be able to look at. Let's talk about a few obstacles. There's always obstacles. Those stinking thorns and thistles of the world keep popping up from time to time. What type of obstacles have hopped up, and how have you have been able to circumvent them or overcome them?
Yeah, well, the first one that comes to my mind, and you know this because we've had these conversations at C-Suite for Christ gatherings, but I am about as hard charging of an alpha male as you're ever going to find. And I know I'm not alone. Brent, you're in that category. Lots of people are in that category. It is very easy for hard charging alpha men, hard charging alpha women, people that are just very competitive. It's easy for us to fall into workaholism. And one of the reasons why it's so easy is you look at society today. Workaholism is about as unhealthy an addiction as you can have. If you're addicted to alcohol, society will tell you that's wrong. Everybody knows. Again, they're not bad people, okay? I mean, everybody struggles from time to time. Everybody battles their demons for time to time, but everybody would tell you alcoholism is not healthy. Somebody who's addicted to drugs, we would tell you the same thing. That's not healthy. People that are addicted to adult websites, people that are addicted to other very unhealthy negative behavior. The problem with workaholism is, to some degree, it's celebrated by society. I mean, you look at somebody, man, I'm rising and grinding 24/7. I'm up at 3 a.m. I don't go to bed till the job gets done. Look at all the money that I'm making. Elon Musk, whatever, you see him in the Wall Street Journal, you see him on Success Magazine. I want that. That's not healthy. And again, it's all about what you want. And for me, one of the biggest obstacles is the constant temptation to go back to that life. And I was in that life. It almost cost me my marriage. It almost cost me my kids. It cost me my health. I was sick a lot. I ended up in the hospital a couple of times just because I was not at all taking care of myself. Now, again, if somebody wants to keep going down that route, have at it. I don't want that. But every day it's tempting to go back because it's addicting when you close a deal. It's addicting when you get accolades. It's addicting when you start going, wow, what I'm doing is really working. I can take on a few more clients. Wow, this is really working. Sure, I can do a couple more speeches and spend a few more weeks on the road. So for me, just being able to set those boundaries, and part of the way I'm able to set those boundaries is I share those with others. I share it with my wife. Hey, don't let me run appointments beyond 5:30. But you don't want your wife mad at you. I can assure you that. So because I brought her in, that helps. One of the things that I did starting in about Q4 of 2021, I will not take an appointment before 9 a.m. That doesn't mean I'm not working before 9 a.m. I sure as heck am. I usually get going about 6:30 every morning, checking emails, strategizing, spending time in the Word, whatever. But I won't take an appointment before 9 a.m. And my business coach, my right-hand person, holds me accountable for that. She has access to my calendar. So just knowing what is going to be tempting to you, knowing when you might be vulnerable, and having a support system to ensure that that doesn't happen, I think is very important. The last thing that I'd say is you have to be, for lack of a better term, you have to be comfortable offending people. Now, when I say offending, I don't mean don't say something purposefully offensive. Like one race is inferior or these people suck. Don't ever say that. I would never condone that. But you have to be true to yourself. And if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for anything. And sometimes being true to yourself in this world that is full of sheep, that goes with the flow, that just wants to say whatever's popular, it's going to be offensive to some people. I love Christ. That's going to be offensive to some people. My politics is a little bit more conservative. And when I see something I don't like, I speak up. That offends people. The fact that I am a self-assured individual and I come across as such sometimes turns people off. Boy, that guy's loud. Boy, that guy's bold. Boy, that guy's in your face. It's the only way that I know how to be. But if you're going to be everything to everybody, that's not differentiation. That's assimilation. And by you blending in with the rest of mankind, that is not a recipe for success.
Wow, I love that. Stand up, be who you are, and be unafraid to get out there respectfully, but be unafraid to get out there and share what you believe and where you're at. How do you,
Brent, let me just add one more thing to that, just real quick,
yes.
Because I don't want anybody listening to this to think that I have all the answers necessarily. Well, if only I was like Paul, I could do it. So when Brent says be unafraid, he's right. I would just make a slight adjustment to that. It's okay to be afraid, but it's not okay to quit. So when I first started posting about my faith on LinkedIn, I was afraid, and I'm okay to admit that, because it's a vicious world out there. I mean, gosh, some people that really disagree with you can really go out of their way to make your life miserable. I was afraid, but I went ahead anyway. The first time I came up with a brand new keynote speech, I gave it to about 1,000 people. I was afraid, but I did it anyway. The first time I came up with a brand new process for cold call script design, I was afraid, but I did it anyway. So Brent is 100% correct. All I would just say is it's okay to be afraid, but it's not okay to quit when you feel in your heart of hearts what you have is going to work.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that clarification. Don't let that fear stop you from taking that next step, and don't quit. I love that. How do you stay on top of your industry? You've got a lot of pieces to track. You have slimmed down, which is good, but how do you stay on top of your game and continue making sure what you're doing is relevant and important to the people you're serving?
Yeah, well, one, it's listening to your stakeholders. So for instance, with the cold call coach, making sure that they find value in the quality of the training. If for whatever reason in our post-training surveys or my post-training conversations, I just didn't get a lot out of it. Oh my gosh, why? Well, what could I have done better? So some people just have this ego. Well, if John didn't like it, that's John's fault. There might be some truth to that. I mean, maybe John didn't show up. Maybe John didn't do the homework. Maybe John didn't go through it with an open mind. But somebody once told me, I think it was somebody in law enforcement, that whenever you're in a car accident, you're automatically 20% at fault just for being there. And even though you could disagree with that, I think there's a little bit of truth to that. And if somebody is very unhappy with your training, as the trainer, me, 20% of that is probably my fault at minimum. What could I do to improve? And I'm not too egotistical to say that I don't listen to feedback. It's not always easy to hear that. Boy, it's not, but I don't want somebody else. I don't want the next customer to have to go through something like that if they didn't have a pleasant experience. So always listening, always learning, always modifying your offerings accordingly. But the other thing too is, and I don't spend a tremendous amount of time worrying about my competitors. Now, you may say this is arrogant, whatever. It's just a confidence that I have in myself. It's almost so much, I don't have any competitors. My competitors have competition in me. I couldn't name you who my competition is at the Cold Call Coach. I couldn't name you who our competition is at C-Suite for Christ. C-Suite for Christ, I don't think has any competition because we're all on the same team anyway. So whether you join us or another Christian movement, heck, we're covering the world in Christ, so it's all good. But this may sound a little bit morose, but one of the things that I believe, and I teach this in one of my talks, you should think about your death every single day. The key to tapping that internal reservoir of joy is thinking about your death every day. Now, people, what? That seems counterintuitive. How is that going to make me happy? It's going to make you happy because you realize your life has an expiration date. And at some point, maybe today, God's going to call you home. It's just the way that it is. Nobody's going to live forever. your quality of your relationships are going to go up. The quality of your interactions are going to go up. You're going to stop sweating the small stuff as much because does it really matter in the final analysis? But as an entrepreneur, what I found out about that is it has just emboldened me to realize, do I want to die with regrets? Do I want to die without taking this risk? And how can I make this organization the absolute very best it can be, leaving it all on the field before that time comes? So for the cold call coach, I push the envelope a little bit more. I come up with more innovative trainings that people are afraid to do. I hold myself accountable in a way that most people are afraid to do it themselves, because I recognize I'm not going to live forever. And I want to make sure that I leave it all on the field. Same thing with C-Suite for Christ. We're commanded in scripture to shout scripture from the rooftop. I don't have a choice. Even if I say, I'm going to play it safe and I'm just going to talk about my faith with Brent and a couple of other people. My God, our God commands us to not play it safe. The Great Commission, go out and make disciples of all the world. And I see a lot of other Christian organizations that provide a lot of service. They bring a lot of value to their members, but they're just too quiet about it. I don't care about what people say because I'm not going to live forever. I don't care if I offend people because at the end of the day, they don't matter anyway. And those things have made me a better entrepreneur, a better person. And along the way, they've generated a lot more followers because that's what people are looking for in a leader anyway.
Oh, I love it. That's great. Great feedback. Talk about your support community. One of the early calls I had with you when I reached out, I said, Paul, I just want to pick your brain on how you got started. You talked about your support network. Talk about your support network and some of the people that have helped you get to where you are today.
Yeah, well, for me, and again, I wasn't born necessarily with this entrepreneurial toolbox or toolkit. And when people say, are entrepreneurs born or made? I think people are born with a genetic predisposition to be very good at entrepreneurship, but certain things have to go their way. They have to be open to it. They have to have certain people in their lives. They have to be exposed to certain life experiences. So there is a little bit of luck involved in that as well. But one of the things that I sucked at early on, I did everything myself. I had one of those mentalities that if I want to get it done, I got to do this myself. And that was evident in college too. I hated doing group projects because some people loved them. Yay, we get to spread the workload around. I looked at it going, crap. My grade's going to suffer because I got these three knuckleheads when I feel like I'm up here and maybe they're not as good as me. Now that's a bad attitude to have. But what I started to find as the demand for my services went up, as I got pulled in 1,000 different directions, there's no way I could do it myself, everything. So what I started to do is I just had a really honest conversation with myself because certain parts of my business were suffering. Bookkeeping was suffering. Invoices were late. My invoices weren't going out at all, and my cash flow was suffering. Some of my follow-up on my employees wasn't getting done. And I'm just thinking, why is that? And I was 100% honest with myself, and I found that I was avoiding those tasks like the bubonic plague. Because if it's a Tuesday afternoon and I have 2 hours of free time, I have the decision. What am I going to do during those 2 hours of free time? Am I going to go through QuickBooks? No, I'd rather get my teeth pulled. Am I going to send those follow-up emails to my employees? No, that doesn't seem fun today. What does sound fun is I'm going to do a social media post. What does sound fun is, I'm going to make about 20 cold calls to try to drum up new business. I was finding that I was really getting drawn to 2 or 3 certain tasks and everything else was just kind of there. But you have to have those other tasks done and you have to successfully complete those if you're going to have a humming business. It's just part of the paradigm. Believe it or not, there's people that are passionate about Excel spreadsheets. I think they're nuts, but they exist. Believe it or not, there's people that are passionate about doing administrative work. I think they're nuts, but they do exist. Just like they think I'm nuts for being passionate about what I do. So I said, these are the 2 or 3 things that I'm going to do all day, every day. I'm going to outsource everything else. So I started surrounding myself with people that loved Excel, that loved numbers, people that were introverted. They didn't want to talk to another human being, but they were okay sending follow-up emails. And what I found is when you have people that are passionate about what they do, they're good at it. They excel at it. So that allowed our business to grow in certain areas. It allowed me to focus on what I was really passionate about. That allowed me to excel in my areas. Now, all of a sudden, I got 7 or 8 people that are crazy passionate about what they do. We're excelling in all these areas. and business has never been better. That was one of the biggest lessons I've learned. And I would encourage that to anybody that's listening to this. You can't be great at everything. Plus, there's probably 90% of your job you don't like. You're not alone. Find someone who loves it. Do only what you love to do, and your quality of life is just going to go through the roof.
Oh, I love that, Paul. Thanks. That's one of the key things that I think brings so many entrepreneurs down, is trying to juggle all those balls and not knowing which ones to hand off, which ones to automate, and actually referenced it earlier, which ones to drop and say, it's okay, let those ones go. That's not something we need to be involved in. So second to last question, what are, you've talked a lot about cold calling, you've talked a lot about your passion. What are 3 concrete tips and suggestions you can give people? Because I got to tell you, sales scares a ton of folks. I know a ton of people who are great at making their cookies and their cupcakes and providing their service, but gosh, getting out there and telling people about it is hard. Sharing their faith is hard. What are 3 tips you can give folks that they can get a good run on 2022 here and say, I'm going to get a little bit better at this category?
Yeah. So a couple things. I would say one is, and again, it's common sense, but one, nothing good ever happens in the confines of your comfort zone. You got to get that in your head. And the sooner you get that in your head, it's going to impact your decision-making moving forward. And just ask yourself, is what I'm about to do within my comfort zone or outside of my comfort zone? Now, that doesn't mean you got to scare the crap out of yourself every single day. I mean, sending an email needs to be done once in a while. But if you spend your entire life inside your comfort zone, don't come crying to me when you don't have business success. Don't come crying to me when you're not the best possible version of yourself. They call it the comfort zone for a particular reason. It's comfortable under the covers. It's comfortable binge watching Netflix. It's comfortable sending a mass non-personal email to 400 people. But because it's comfortable, that's not likely to lead to a tremendous amount of success. So if you're honest with yourself, you just say, did I spend the majority of my day in my comfort zone today? And if the answer is yes, the odds of your business success aren't going to be very high. Number 2, one of the number 1 ways you're going to succeed in life is if you first fail. And a lot of people are afraid to get out of their comfort zone because they don't want to fail. And that's the most oxymoronic thing in the history of the world. I don't want to do it because I might fail. Well, I'm here to say you're never going to succeed if you don't fail. I mean, again, it's just common sense. If I say, I'm going to start this business, you put a lot into it and the business doesn't work. It sucks. That sucks. There's no way to sugarcoat that. Maybe you lose money. Maybe you have to spend a year getting a real job, licking your wounds and just kind of biding your time before you get back at it again. But people learn so much more through failure than they do success. In fact, if anything else, one of the things that I kind of pray when I have a cold call client that goes through my program, again, this sounds oxymoronic. I pray that they don't set the world on fire right away. Now, some do, but the reason I pray that they don't, well, Paul, don't you want that? Your business is going to grow. But I'm more concerned about them as a person than I am my business. My business will take care of themselves. I don't want this person to grow fat, lazy, and arrogant. I got this. I'm going to rest on my laurels, and then the world bites them in the ass. No, I want them to struggle a little bit because it's going to force them to go through some introspection. What am I not doing? Why is this not working? You know what? I'm going to hit the pause button all afternoon. I'm going to go into the lab and I'm going to try to figure this out. The key to success is failure, and you must give yourself the ability to fail once in a while. The last thing, this kind of goes hand in hand with what I said about your comfort zone, fear. Most people, again, avoid fear like the Black Death. I don't want to give a public speech because it scares me. I don't want to do this cold call because it's going to scare me. I don't want to start this business because it's going to scare me. Now, I look at everything from a spiritual lens. Fear is not from God. Fear is from Satan. And one of the ways that I choose to look at this, now, again, there is a real biological issue to some degree if somebody has chronic anxiety. Okay, so maybe seek professional help, maybe get some medication. Sometimes that is a real thing. But when I look at fear, for me, that's Satan going, uh-oh, Brent's onto something. I'm going to convince him not to do this. I'm going to plant this seed of fear, doubt, and anxiety so he goes down the other path because Satan doesn't want us to win. Most people use fear as a barrier. They will go all the way up to that feeling of fear. And as soon as they get close to it and it starts to scare them, they retreat. The most successful people that I know don't use fear as a barrier. They use fear as fuel. When you feel that fear, you know you're onto something. When you feel that fear, you know you're on the edge of the comfort zone. You just have a choice to make. Am I going to recoil? Or am I going to take a deep breath, put my head down, suck it up, go forward 5 feet, get outside my comfort zone and see what I'm made of? And I would encourage everybody to suck it up, take those few steps, and you're going to be amazed at what you're able to accomplish.
I love it. Paul, if people want to get a hold of you, if they want to hear a little more of your story, get involved with any of your organizations, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah. So what I would say is my central repository is my website. So there's information on my public speaking, cold call training for sure, C-Suite for Christ. So just go to my website. It's just Paul M. Neuberger, Neub as in boy, ERGER.com.
Awesome. Hey, Paul, really appreciate the time we had together. We've been listening to Paul M. Neuberger, the founder of Cold Call Coach, C-Suite for Christ, numerous other ventures. I can't even recap all the things he just shared with us in that short period of time, but you got to take some pieces away. Do not let fear conquer you. Do not stay in your comfort zone. Get out there, do what God created you to do, and be bold in that aspect. Along that line, I'm still offering a free opportunity for entrepreneurs to be able to get together. Entrepreneur Encounters, Wednesdays, 4:30 Central. Sign up for us, bit.ly/entrepreneur encounters. You're going to get an opportunity to interact with other entrepreneurs. You heard Paul say it a bunch of times and emphasize it at the end. This is not a solo journey. You've got to meet other people. You've got to find other folks. You've got to find ways to connect. This doesn't have to go alone. So do take that opportunity. It's absolutely free, runs for 45 minutes. It's a great opportunity every middle of the week to be able to check in, get accountability, find some different ways to be successful, and learn how to share and build into others. Got a few sponsors that help me along the way. Andrew Feller Photography has done all our photo. Buckethead Creative does all our graphic arts. Chris Crane and Charlie's Music Factory do our music on the way out. And Megan Bruzan Consulting has helped us with our initial web presence and with some of the podcasting work. So again, I'm Brent Halfwasson, business coach and entrepreneur. I'm here to help entrepreneurs and owners grow your profit and accelerate your business. If I can help you, bit.ly/coach with Brent. Let's get some time together. That'll be absolutely free, and see how I can support you in growing your profitability and accelerating your business. Again, I'm Brent Halfwasson. Thanks for your time on Entrepreneur Encounters.